All right, let's dive right into one of the most intense and honestly unsettling stories ever told. It's a raw, violent encounter on a desolate shoreline, and yeah, it's a story many of us think we know. But what happens when you look at it through a completely different lens? Let's get into it.
So the story just throws us right into this brutal image. We meet a man who isn't just an outcast. He's literally living among the dead, in a graveyard. His entire existence is just screaming and self-inflicted violence. This isn't just a description of someone who's mad, it's a portrait of absolute, unrelenting agony. And what's wild here is the sheer power being described. The community, they tried to solve the problem with force, right? With chains. But this man's inner turmoil gave him a kind of superhuman strength. He just tore them apart. He was a force of nature, completely outside of their control, and a living, breathing reminder of their failure to help him.
So let's really set the scene for this encounter. Jesus and his disciples, they land on what's basically foreign ground, a place of tombs, of unclean animals, totally outside the familiar rules of their world. And it's right here, in this borderland, that this wild, unpredictable man just burst from the shadows to meet them.
The first interaction is just so dramatic. It's not a slow approach, it's a full-on sprint. This man, who nobody could subdue, runs directly at Jesus and then just collapses at his feet. There's this desperate, almost contradictory energy happening. It's aggression and submission all at once. And that tells you right away, this is no ordinary meeting.
And then he says these absolutely shocking first words. Before Jesus can even really speak, the man cries out. He knows exactly who Jesus is, calls him by name, but then he begs not to be tortured. His immediate assumption is that this powerful figure is here to inflict even more pain. This sets the stage not as a gentle healing, but as a full-blown confrontation.
Okay, so for centuries, the classic interpretation has centered on supernatural possession, on demons. But what if we look at this exact same event through a different, more modern lens, a psychological one? What if we start asking a totally different set of questions?
This right here is the question that shifts our entire perspective. Instead of looking for some external cause, this view asks us to consider the internal reality of the man himself. What actually happens to a person when they are subjected to unimaginable terror and then completely cast out by everyone they know?
He wasn't living in the tombs by choice. He was, as one source puts it, a solved problem. His community couldn't handle him, so they shoved him to the literal margins of society. He became the local ghost story, the cautionary tale they told their children. They turned a suffering human being into a ruiner.
And this shows us something so timeless about people. Calling it possession was a simple label for a complex, messy, and probably ugly reality. It let the villagers completely sidestep the hard questions about what might have happened to him or their own role in his suffering. It was just easier than confronting the deep wounds of trauma.
Now, this insight is really profound. It totally reframes his self-harm. From this perspective, cutting himself with stones wasn't just a symptom of madness. It was a desperate attempt to feel something real, to create physical boundaries when his psychological ones had been completely shattered. The physical pain was a way to define himself in the face of the shapeless, endless pain of being alone.
And this brings us to the most famous part of the whole story, the dialogue that gives this man his name. When we look at this exchange through this new lens, the words take on a powerful and honestly a heartbreaking new meaning.
So Jesus starts with a simple, humanizing question. What is your name? But think about it. For this man, it's an impossible question. After years of being called a madman, a danger, a thing, his own name, the very core of his identity, it's gone. It just doesn't belong to him anymore.
And here it is, his iconic, chilling reply. My name is Legion, for we are many. For 2,000 years, this has been heard as the voice of a horde of demons speaking through one person. But what if it's something else?
So you've got these two views sitting side by side. On the one hand, the traditional supernatural view. It's a literal army of evil spirits. But on the other hand, the psychological view here's an incredibly precise description of what severe trauma does to a person. It's the voice of a self that has been shattered into countless fragments. All the memories, the voices, the despair. He isn't one person anymore. He's a crowd, a legion, at war inside himself.
So the story then moves to this incredible climax. The legion is cast out, a whole herd of pigs stampedes into a lake, and the man is restored. But the reaction from the community? That might just be the most shocking part of the whole story.
And the scale of this event is just immense. We're talking about 2,000 pigs. This isn't a small thing. It's a huge economic catastrophe for the town. Their wealth, their livelihood, literally just sank to the bottom of a lake.
So imagine the news that hits town. It's this wild combination of miracle and disaster. It's, hey, that madman from the tombs, he's totally sane now. Oh, and by the way, our entire economy just drowned. The two facts are completely tangled up, and it totally frames how the townspeople are going to react. So, the townspeople arrive and they see the evidence with their own eyes. The man they were all terrified of is calm, he's clothed, he's rational. Everything they might have wished for has come true. And their reaction? Fear. Pure fear. His sanity terrified them more than his madness ever did. You see, his madness was a known problem they could keep at a distance. His healing was a disruptive, unpredictable power they couldn't control.
So, faced with this undeniable miracle, the community makes a choice. They don't celebrate. They don't ask for more healing. They ask the source of that healing to please just go away. The restored man was a living, breathing indictment of their own failure, and the economic cost was just too high a price to pay for one man's soul.
And in this final, poignant twist, the healed man, he wants to escape. He wants to go with his rescuer. But he's given a far more difficult command. Go home. He isn't allowed to run away from his past. He's told to go back and live in the very community that chained him up, exiled him, and then rejected the person who healed him. His biggest challenge was really just beginning.
So why does this ancient story still have such a grip on us? Well, whether you see it as a supernatural exorcism, a profound psychological healing, or maybe even both, it leaves us with two deep, interwoven challenges that are as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago.
First, you've got the individual's task. For the man, the healing wasn't a magic fix. It was the start of the long, hard, daily work of staying whole. And second, there's the community's task. Their challenge was to look at this man and see a human being, not just the madman from the tombs. They had to choose to welcome the person, not just the story they had always told about him.
And this brings us to the final, really provocative question. The responsibility for his future, for his full return to society, it fell to the very people who had once been more comfortable with him as a monster. The story ends, but that challenge echoes forward to us. When we're faced with people who are broken, or suffering, or just other, what choice do we make? Do we prefer them safely at the margins, or do we take on the messy, disruptive, and powerful work of seeing them as whole?